The Schutzstaffel, or SS, was the Nazi government's dark side. The group, whose name means Protection Squadron, was created in 1925 to keep Hitler and other Nazi leaders safe. It was a big deal when Heinrich Himmler took over as leader of the SS in 1929. Himmler wanted the SS to become a top-level group that reflected the Nazi Party's ideas about a master race. People who he thought would be good for the SS were carefully chosen based on their family ties and political support. They were supposed to protect racial purity. At first, it was just 8 guys who were basically bodyguards, but over time, they became more important to the party. As their strength and number grew, so did their violence. The SS killed thousands of people every day by the end of World War II, when they had more than 580,000 members. Torturing political prisoners. Before the Second World War, the Nazis set up their first concentration camp in Dachau, Germany. Because of the medical tests that were done there after the war, it became well known. But in March 1933, this House of Horrors was a place where German political prisoners, not Jews, were kept. Several months before, Hitler had become Chancellor of Germany. It was now illegal to speak out against him because it could lead to death. That year, about 4,800 people were held at the SS-guarded Dachau concentration camp. A lot of them were communists, socialists, and Democrats. People who were against the government were either jailed or killed in the concentration camp without being tried. Sebastian Nevsky was killed not long after the camp opened, which led to a very public investigation by one of Munich's public judges. After bad results, Hitler told the courts that they would no longer be able to watch over the concentration camp and that the SS would be in charge of everything there. It was clear that this meant there would be no more probes into the deaths at Dachau. The SS would be free to kill prisoners without being caught. The new rules for Dachau said that prisoners who didn't follow them would be beaten, and anyone who tried to run would be killed right then and there. All prison camps after this one had to follow these rules. The Night of the Long Knives. Not long after the SS was formed, they started to get a bad name for being cruel thugs who did the dirty work for the Nazis. Hitler started telling his followers to be violent toward his political opponents as early as 1921, when he became leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Nazi Party. Himmler was already in charge of the SS when he was named head of the Gestapo in April 1934. The Gestapo is a secret police organization. In that job, it was his job to find and arrest Hitler's enemies. But he wasn't just looking for enemies inside the Nazi Party. Also, Himmler went after people inside the party who he thought were a danger. This was especially true for people in the Sturmabteilung, SA, a paramilitary group. The SS started out as a branch of the SA, but by 1934, Hitler didn't like how strong and powerful the SA had become. It was decided that Hitler's opponents should be killed in order to strengthen his power even more. The most important of them was Ernst Röhm, who was in charge of the SA. Between June 30th and July 2nd, 1934, people who were seen as enemies were rounded up and killed in an operation largely run by the SS. There were more than 85 murders, and it's possible that there were hundreds. Most of them were done by members of the SS. After 3 days of killing, it was called the Night of the Long Knives, in honor of the time when the Saxons attacked the Britons out of the blue and killed all of them. The SS Einsatzgruppen's destructive Polish campaign. Getting rid of anything and everyone that the SS saw as a threat to the Nazis was their main goal. The Einsatzgruppen were one way they did this. This was an armed task force called the SS Einsatzgruppen. It was created in 1938 when Germany took over Austria and parts of Czechoslovakia. Before the invasion of Poland in 1939, the Einsatzgruppen were mostly there to help the military. But after that, everything changed. About 3,000 men in the Einsatzgruppen were split into 6 groups when the Polish campaign began. Their goal was to kill all the Jews and Polish politicians who were still in the area after the Germans took it over. The Einsatzgruppen killed more than 16,000 people and destroyed more than 500 towns in Poland from September 1st, 1939 to October 25th, 1939. 10,000 people were arrested in just the first few weeks of the Polish attack. At first, trials were held, but Reinhard Heydrich, who was in charge of the SS's intelligence service, ordered that people be hung or shot without being tried. The killings weren't going fast enough, that was his reason. Some people were burned alive in temples, but most of the people the Einsatzgruppen killed were thought to be fighting the government. So many people were killed that German army leaders worried about what the Einsatzgruppen were doing. Establishing the general government. Invading Poland in 1939 was the start of World War II and gave the Nazis more land to rule. Poland was split into 3 parts. The middle part was called General Government. It was always planned that general government would be a place where the SS could do some of the worst things they could do to Jews. Hans Frank was the Governor-General of the general government, but SS Obergruppenführer Friedrich Krüger was in charge of the area. He and the people who worked for him in the SS were there to carry out the Nazis' race policies. Also, the 12 million people who lived in the general government were used as cheap labor. Complete submission was the only thing that was okay. If the Polish resistance killed a German, the SS would put 50 to 100 Poles to death in public. The SS also killed and arrested a lot of people just to send a message and keep the resistance down. A lot of Polish institutions were destroyed. Works of art and historical items were stolen, and their banks were taken over. Even the food sources were controlled by the Germans, leaving the Poles with just enough food to stay alive. Things were much worse for Jewish Poles, though. Soon after the attack, their property was taken and they were made to work as slaves. After 3 years, a lot of them were sent to nearby death camps, where most of them were killed. The Night of Kristall. The Nazi government and the SA planned Kristallnacht, which was also called the Night of Kristall or the Night of Broken Glass. It was a violent 2-day uprising. Nazi offices in Germany, Austria and Sudetenland, which is now part of Czechoslovakia, were told on November 9, 1938, that a spontaneous massacre would happen. Pogrom is a Russian word for when non-Jews attack and fight against Jews. People who were part of the pogrom were told not to hurt non-Jewish Germans or foreigners, to take synagogue records before destroying the building, and to give the archives to Secret Service agents. Firefighters were told to do nothing while Jewish shops and synagogues burned down. They were only told to help if it looked like the fire might spread to Aryan homes. Also, the cops in the area were told to catch as many healthy young Jewish men as they could. During the 2 days of Kristallnacht, at least 91 Jews were killed, hundreds more were damaged, and over 7,500 Jewish businesses were broken into. Police records show that many women were raped. The SS and Gestapo arrested more than 30,000 Jewish men during Kristallnacht and put them in prison camps, where hundreds of them died. It was the first time the Nazis put a lot of people in jail because of their race, but it wouldn't be the last. The Nazis used Kristallnacht as a reason to start the process of sending Jews out of Germany and giving their property to people of Aryan descent. To make things even worse, German officials said that the Jewish community was to blame for the attack and gave German Jews a $400 million fine. The Third Reich also took insurance money from Jewish business and homeowners whose property was damaged during the event. Kidnapping and Germanization of Aryan children. The SS's job was to guard the Nazi idea of racial purity. This meant getting rid of non-Aryans and making more people who were important because of their ancestry. That is, the Third Reich wanted the SS members who were chosen based on their race to have as many blue-eyed, blonde-headed children as possible so that the Aryan race could grow. But the SS went a lot further with their ideas. They didn't want children who were Polish or from somewhere other than Germany to lose their Aryan features. They thought that their genetic traits were good and showed that they had Nordic blood in their bodies. Hitler made it clear in a speech in 1939 that the goal in Poland was to separate the Aryan children. A fundamental question is the racial screening and sorting of the young, he said. It's clear that some really great racial types will show up every once in a while in this group of people. The Germans then carefully looked at all Polish kids between the ages of 2 and 12 and decided whether they were racially useful or racially worthless. Old enough, worthless kids were sent to work in Germany instead of being sent back home. The valuable kids were taken from their homes to join Germany's master race. Over 6-year-olds were sent to schools to be Germanized, which means they were taught German. The younger kids were looked at more closely and then given to SS members who didn't have kids and families of good race. It was made clear in letters from SS chiefs like Lieutenant General Ulrich Greifeld, that the operation was to be kept secret. The leaders made up the story that these children were German orphans from lands that they had taken back. It was because of this that many of the German families had no idea that the chosen children had been taken. At least 200,000 children were taken from their homes in Poland, and another 200,000 were taken from other Eastern European countries. Some kids were finally reunited with their parents many years later, but by that time, many of the younger ones had forgotten everything except their German family. In the end, many loved families were torn apart again, which made things even worse for the kids. Using rape and sterilization to degrade women. Over the years, diaries, writings, interviews with victims, and reports from eyewitnesses have shown that the SS raped thousands of Jewish women during pogroms and in concentration camps. There are also records of at least 10 brothels in concentration camps where women were made to work as prostitutes. Laws said that members of the Aryan SS couldn't have sexual relations with Jewish women, but many reports show that they did. The brothels, which Himmler approved of, were set up to make the male prisoners work harder and to help the camp guards do their jobs better. People have told horrible stories, and bodies have been dug up that show how women were sexually abused and tortured just for the SS guards' pleasure. These attacks were also torture meant to make the women feel bad about themselves and break their spirits. Records also show that tens of thousands of women were sterilized in the camps, and many others were forced to have abortions, which also made them unable to have children. For some, the brutal attacks made it impossible for them to have children. Biological warfare. The SS was supposed to keep the camps safe because they were the protection squadron. Part of the SS leadership's job was to figure out the best ways to go to war and kill people. They took this on with enthusiasm and studied it deeply. As part of their work, they tried out biological weapons. In 1942, an institute for study into insects was set up at the Dachau concentration camp, according to old records. There, the Nazis did tests with the goal of making deadly weapons, even though Hitler had said that such weapons were illegal. Edward May was asked by Himmler to test the idea that insects like mosquitoes could be used to give malaria to enemies. May looked at different kinds of mosquitoes to figure out which one would do the job best. He also learned about fleas, rats, and tried to get the advice of people who knew a lot about the plague. In the end, May refused to test her ideas on real people and never actually worked with infectious illnesses. It looks like he was more of an expert whose job it was to find the insects that would make the best bioweapons. The SS didn't have the time or money to carry out their plan, which was a good thing. Mobile gas chambers. Germany moved into the Soviet Union as World War II went on. The main job of the SS Einsatzgruppen squads, whose name means mobile killing units, once they got a foothold, was to find and kill political and racial enemies in Soviet Union land that they controlled. Gas tanks that could be moved around were one way that the Einsatzgruppen did their job. The SS changed the way cars' exhaust systems worked so that carbon monoxide would be pumped into the back of the car, where people were sitting without knowing it. People were killed as the Einsatzgruppen drove right up to their homes and took them hostage. Then they dumped the bodies in a mass grave. At the end of 1941, these mobile gas vans were used at the first place where people were killed in Chelmno. By 1943, at least 152,000 people had been killed by the purpose-made death machines. The things the Einsatzgruppen did were seen by many experts as the first step in the Nazis' final solution. The final solution's killing centers. It's really as scary as it sounds. Behind closed doors, the Nazis' plan to get rid of the Jews was called the final solution. The solution was killing a lot of people. Years of spreading hate and discrimination led the SS leadership to decide that this horrible act was the best way to turn things around. Not much is known about the talks that took place behind closed doors, or how long SS generals had been thinking about wiping out the Jewish people completely. But on July 31st, 1941, after Hitler gave Himmler control of all security, SS General Reinhard Heydrich was told to start making plans for planning and carrying out the horrible crime. It was their plan to test their answer first in the general government. They called it Operation Reinhard. The SS set up 3 places to kill Jews here so that they could kill as many as possible as quickly as possible. Most of the gas chambers were set up in these death factories, which were in Sobibor, Belzec and Treblinka. Soon after, Himmler gave the order for Auschwitz-Birkenau to become a killing center. This is where 100,000 Jews died. The German SS killed about 2.7 million Jews at the killing sites as part of their plan for the final solution. We hope you liked this video. Watch another video here.